Hello and welcome to the FI News Review. Each week we focus on relevant news in the food and beverage industry. This week we are focusing on ultra-processed foods. There's a wide lexicon to describe them, but basically they're foods that contain multiple food extracts and artificial ingredients. There's been a lot of negative sentiment towards UPFs, but the food industry isn't taking it lying down. A recent Wall Street Journal article reports food manufacturers are pushing back against federal investigations into heavily processed foods. So, with all the focus on this topic, what is its impact on other categories in the food industry? To help us answer these questions, I want to bring in my partner for this week, FI's business writer, Grace Garwood. Grace, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Susan. Happy to be here.
All right, let's get started. First, describe to us exactly what UPFs are and tell us about their prevalence in the food industry.
Sure. I'll start things off here with a few quick facts about UPFs. According to research from Northeastern University in the academic journal Nature Foods, 73% of the U.S. food supply is ultra-processed. More than 60% of caloric intake in the U.S. comes from ultra-processed food. And on average, UPFs are 52% cheaper than the less processed alternatives. Now, these are some pretty eye-opening figures, especially when you consider the foods we most commonly associate with the terms, right? Got frozen pizza, potato chips, hot dogs, candy, soda, junk foods, right? Overconsumption of UPFs like this have been linked to more than 30 health conditions to date, including heart disease, anxiety, and cancer. So raising awareness here is clearly warranted and necessary. However, it's important to keep in mind that a pretty wide variety of foods can fall under the ultra-processed banner. This is according to the NOVA food classification system. So here's some examples from a recent study by the USDA. Dried fruits, canned beans, nuts, whole grain breads, yogurt, cheese, and refrigerated chicken strips. Even vegan staples like extra firm tofu and tempeh can be considered ultra-processed. So where these products fall on the scale really depends on the company, the ingredients, and their nutritional value. So I'd say there's definitely some opportunities for consumer education here.
Grace, let's talk about the impact of UPFs on other sectors in the food industry, in particular the plant-based industry, as you are the resident plant-based expert at Food Institute. You put out that Plant-Based Insider. Viewers at home, please check that out. It goes out every Tuesday. Grace, can you tell us the mere title, ultra-processed foods, how has that made things particularly challenging for the plant-based sector, and how have its major players responded?
Sure. So these challenges with the stigma of UPFs are industry-wide, but plant-based has really been in the crosshairs, especially meat alternatives that mimic animal protein. Retail sales data from Chicago-based marketing firm Circana show how fresh meat alternatives peaked in 2020 and decelerated significantly by the third quarter of 2021. The initial spike in trial was boosted in part by healthy associations with the term plant-based. Sounds very natural and wholesome. So when their ingredients and processing methods fell under scrutiny, there was this erosion of consumer trust that the category has basically been working to rebuild ever since. So there's been a lot of recalibrating over the past 2 years. In terms of response, major alt meat players like Beyond Meat and Impossible Foods have been periodically rolling out new recipes with shorter ingredient lists and better nutritional profiles to try and earn back that health halo. The most noteworthy one I've seen is Beyond's revamped core beef platform, which they just rolled out in February. This includes the Beyond Burger and Beyond Beef Crumbles. They replaced the canola oil and the refined coconut oil with avocado oil. Beyond claims that this reduced the saturated fat count by 60%. They're using new protein sources too, red lentil and fava beans. The products are also backed by major health organizations like the American Heart Association, and they're the first plant-based meats to be Clean Label Project certified. So these are still ultra-processed foods, right? But Beyond is really leading with transparency here and putting the nutrition front and center, and I think that's pretty noteworthy.
Grace, you mentioned about trust and loyalty. What do you think in particular plant-based producers need to focus on in order to really grow those two things with, grow that relationship with their consumer?
As I mentioned, there's more room for consumer education when it comes to understanding the scales and benefits of food processing. So that's definitely one key area with potential. Demand for transparency keeps rising across the food industry too, and there's no signs of slowdown there. Younger consumers don't just demand trust, they want to see their personal values reflected in the companies they support and the products they purchase. This is especially true of Gen Z. So, moving forward, transparency could become essential for plant based companies to retain customers and encourage loyalty. Leading with transparency includes using trusted processes across the supply chain and leveraging storytelling to spread awareness. Upcycling is one example of a food processing method that consumers have grown to trust and support. Transparency will also become more critical as the lines between food tech and ingredient production continue to blur. This is especially true for alternative proteins as the category pushes further into new territories like fermentation, cultivation, and even 3D printing. 𝗟𝗲𝘁 has been covering a lot of these future food topics in our weekly newsletter, The Plant-Based Insider. I believe there's a link to sign up for that at the bottom of this video, right, Susan?
Yes, it is indeed. All right, Grace Garwood, 𝗟𝗲𝘁's business writer and plant-based expert. Grace, thanks again for joining us.
Thanks, Susan.
And as always, you can check out all the great content that we've done by clicking on this playlist. Till next time, I'm Susan Choi. Take care and have a great weekend.